If your week keeps falling apart, your calendar may not be the problem. Most people I talk to who feel behind, scattered, and mentally crowded have plenty of calendar space. They block out time, they set reminders, they start Sunday with a plan, and by Tuesday, the plan is gone and the feeling is back. The common assumption is that you need more time. But if you have been chasing that for a while and nothing has changed, I want to offer you a different explanation. The problem is not your schedule. The problem is what you're carrying inside it. Today, we are talking about open loops, what they are, why they drain you, and four types most likely running your week right now. By the end of this episode, you will know exactly which one to close. Welcome to Think Like a Leader. I'm Dorian Britton, and if you're new here, this is the show for high achieving professionals who want to lead their life with more clarity and control. Here is the belief most people are operating from. If I just had more time, I could get on top of things. Now, it makes sense on the surface. The days feel short, the list feel long, the math seems simple. But more time does not help if you fill it with the same mental load that you're already carrying. You've probably tested this without realizing it. You got a free afternoon, maybe a slow evening, a weekend with nothing that you have scheduled. And instead of feeling productive, you felt vaguely anxious and could not explain why. The time was there, but you could not use it cleanly. That is not a time problem. That is a load problem. Your brain is still running everything it had been running before, right? Unfinished decisions, tasks that you still need to handle, or maybe conversations that you've been putting off, possibly things you promised yourself, but you just haven't delivered on yet. And all of it is actually running quietly in the background, whether you acknowledge it or not. Your brain is not a task manager, and it was never built to hold the list. There was research from cognitive science on something called the Zeigarnik effect. Incomplete tasks, they stay active in your working memory until they are resolved. And your brain keeps these tabs open for everything that's unfinished. And every open tab costs you something. Could be attention, could be your focus, could be your emotional bandwidth. And this is why capable people feel foggy all the time. And it's not because they lack any type of discipline. It's because too many things are still open. Open loops are silent attention debt. You do not feel them charging you moment to moment, but they are charging you every single day. The real problem is mental load, not stress, not busyness, mental load, which is the cumulative weight of everything unresolved that your brain is still tracking. Think about a computer with 47, 49 different browser tabs open. Even if you're not actively looking at most of them, the machine does slow down, and you know this. The resources are being used. The system is working harder than it actually needs to because nothing has been closed. That is what your brain looks like on most days. Now, here is where I want you to identify yourself because there are two kinds of professionals carrying this problem, and they look different on the surface. First type keeps adding new ideas, new commitments, start new projects, maybe. List grows faster than it closes, and they end most weeks with more open than when they started. And it cannot fully explain why they feel scattered even when they've worked hard. And then the second type goes numb. They stop adding consciously, but they also stop closing. They handle only what forces itself to the front, and they kind of let everything else kind of drift around. And the pile does not grow as fast, but nothing is moving. And the same items are there next week, next month, and even sometimes next year. Most overloaded professionals are a mix of both, overloading in some areas, going numb in others. And either way, the result is the same. The load stays high, the focus stays low, and that feeling of being behind persists no matter how the calendar gets arranged. Being behind on task is one problem. Carrying a pile of unresolved loops is a different one. And the second is almost always underneath the first. So let me give you an example. I'll make this a little bit more concrete for you. Just last year, I was working a full-time corporate job, building out what would eventually become Think Like a Leader. managing a podcast, being a new husband, being a brand new father, studying psychology, getting my master's on the side. And on paper, I was handling it all. I was showing up to the job. I was recording all the episodes. The family was good. I was passing all my schoolwork. But internally, I was constantly foggy. I would sit down at work on the podcast and I'd feel this pull toward these other things that I knew I had not handled, right? And I would try to write and keep getting interrupted by other stuff that's going on in my head. And it was just a lot. And I would finish so many things. For example, I'd finish a work call and immediately I'd feel like I'd forgotten something important when even though I hadn't. Like my calendar was fine. I was doing all my time block. The schedule was it was reasonable, but I felt scattered all the time. And what I eventually understood was that I had never built like a real system for closing things. I had a system for capturing ideas, sure, a system for showing up to the commitments that I made, but nothing for deciding what actually happens to everything else. So things just honestly accumulated. Tasks I looked at, but not decided on, conversations that I kept delaying all the time, personal promises I had made to myself, but I had no plan attached to any of them. None of those things were taking up obvious calendar time, but all of them were taking up mental space inside my mind. And mental space is the thing that you actually work from. The week I started naming what was open and closing things deliberately, I did start to feel that fog start to lift, enough to confirm that the problem had never been like me scheduling or calendar time blocking. And so let's talk about the framework here. So we're going to define this, and the word is open loop. And an open loop is any unfinished thing still making a claim on your attention. It doesn't have to be urgent. It does not have to feel important. But if your brain is still tracking it as unresolved, it's an open loop and it's costing you. And so here are the four types of open loops. Number one, task loops. These are the most obvious. A task loop is something you need to do that you have not done and have not decided when you will do it. Pretty simple. But the key word is decided. A task with a real plan attached to it is not the same problem as a task floating around with no decision made. The first one still has to be done, but it's not in an open loop in the same way, right? Your brain knows like where it goes or where it belongs. But a floating task, those cycle back. You'll see it in your mind, you'll think about it, you like to get this done, and then you move on to something else, and then you'll see it again. And so the loop stays open. And let's say 20 of those floating tasks are not better than two urgent ones. They're often worse because they create a constant sense of unfinished business without anything urgent enough to force closure. If it's still in your head, it's still open. Task loops close in one of three ways. You schedule it with a real date and a real time. You delegate it to someone else that can do it, or you delete it because it's actually not worth your time and the continued cost of carrying it with you. Anything else just moves the loop to a different location. Number two is decision loops. Decision loops are ones people underestimate the most, to be honest. A decision loop is anything that you've been revisiting repeatedly without landing on a clear answer. And it could be professional, it could be a career direction, maybe a conversation that you need to have with your manager or your wife, or it's a side project that you keep starting and stopping. It could be personal, it could be a financial decision that you've been sitting on. Maybe it's a commitment that you're not sure that you want to keep. The thing about decision loops is that they feel productive to sit inside of. You're thinking about the problem, you're weighing the options, you're being extra careful. But for most decisions you've been holding for more than 2 weeks, what looks like deliberation is actually avoidance. And the loop is open, not because the decision is genuinely complex. It's open because making the decision requires something uncomfortable. Maybe saying no to something, committing to something uncertain, having that hard conversation. So instead of closing it, you just keep reopening it. And every time that you revisit it without resolving it, you spend more mental energy on something you have already spent mental energy on. That is a complete waste of your time. Revisiting without deciding is not thinking, it's paying rent on an empty apartment. To close a decision loop, you either make the decision or you set a specific date by which you will make it. Anything else is re entering the loop. Number three is conversation loops. A conversation loop is anything that needs to be said and has not been said. Very simple. Now, this one hits differently because it involves another person. There's this relational weight to it. It's a little bit more at stake, which is exactly why people avoid it the longest, in my opinion. Conversation loops come in a few forms. You have the direct kind of feedback that you may need to give, or a boundary that you need to set with someone, or a problem that you see that needs to be named. The second is the clarifying kind, ambiguity that you keep hoping will resolve itself. And then you have the repair kind. Something happened and neither party addresses it directly. And now it influences the whole dynamic while remaining officially unacknowledged. All three are open loops. All three cost you more attention than task loops do because the emotional complexity makes them harder to compartmentalize. People rationalize the delay by saying they're waiting for the right moment. But if your brain keeps returning to the conversation on its own, it's telling you something. The loop is not closed. The conversation you keep rehearsing in your head is the one you need to have out loud. So, a useful rule if you've been mentally rehearsed the conversation that you need to have more than twice, it's overdue. Close it. Close that conversation by having it. It doesn't have to be perfect and not with every contingency plan. You just got to have the conversation. And number four is self promise loops. A self promise loop is a commitment you made to yourself that is still open. Things you said that you were going to do, standards that you set and then just kind of, I'm going to let that slide. Maybe intentions that you've held for months or years, even that have not turned into actual consistent action. These carry the deepest weight, not because they're more important than the others, but because they sit at the intersection of identity and evidence. Every self promise loop that stays open sends a quiet message. You cannot trust yourself to follow through. And that message compounds. You stop making commitments to yourself because you have not kept the previous ones. The gap between what you said you would do and what you have actually done grows wide enough to create a steady background hum of doubt. And that hum makes everything harder. Self trust is built in receipts. Every closed loop is one. Self promise loops close the same way all loops close, with a real decision and a real action, not a new intention, right? The receipts matter more than the ambition. Now, let me show you how to use the lead framework to close one of these today. So, lead is the four-step operating sequence that I use to think like a leader. And here's how it applies directly to open loops. L is for look at what is real. Before you can close a loop, you have to name it specifically, not vaguely, not I need to handle my finances. That's not specific enough to close, right? What does that even mean? I have not reviewed my credit card statement in 3 months and do not know if my automatic transfers are still correct. That's specific. And you can act on that. You get it out of your head and into plain language. And you cannot close what you refuse to name. So you have to name it. E is for establish your standard. For each loop, define what done actually looks like. A lot of loops stay open because done is never defined. Set the standard before you act. A is for act and close the loop. Then you act. You do the thing, have the conversation, you make the decision, you schedule the action, you put a real date and a real time on it. The action is the receipt, not the plan, not the intention, the actual closed thing. If the loop cannot close right now, it gets one of the three decisions: schedule with a specific date, delegate it to someone else, or deliberately delete it because it is not worth the continued cost of your life. And then D is for default to the new identity. Every loop you close is evidence that you can name things accurately, evidence that you can follow through on what you said you would do. That evidence rewires how you relate to the next commitment. When self trust is built on closed loops instead of good intention, the next thing you commit to carries a different weight. You know what it feels like to deliver now, and you start defaulting to delivery. One closed loop is more useful than 10 new intentions. All right. So before we finish up, here's one thing that you can do. And if you're driving, don't do it. But 3 minutes in a single note on paper, wherever you write stuff down, what is open? What is open? Right. And we're going to categorize it: task loops, decision loops, conversation loops, self promise loops. Don't organize it yet. Do not filter it. Just get it out. Just get it out. And then circle the one loop that is costing you the most attention right now. Not the most important one, not the most urgent one, the one making the most background noise right now in your life. Not because it fixes everything, because it doesn't, but it builds the receipt. And the receipt is where the real work actually starts for this. So just close one. So here's the summary of what we covered today. You do not need more time. You need fewer open loops. More time does not help if you fill it with the same mental load. Your brain is not a task manager, and open loops are silent attention debt that charges you whether you're thinking about them or not. There are four types: task loops, decision loops, conversation loops, and self promise loops. Each show up differently, all close the same way. A real decision followed by a real action, and the lead framework gives you the sequence to do it. Look at what is real, establish the standard, act and close the loop, default to the new identity. If you want to do this in a structured way, not just as a mental exercise, but as an actual reset, you can finish in about 30 minutes. It's called the open loop reset. You dump what is open, you sort it by the category, choose what closes first, and leave with a clear next action. It's not a complicated system, right? It's a 30-minute reset that essentially gives your brain relief by getting the noise out and getting at least one to two things closed. Okay. The link will be in the description. So go grab it, run the reset, and go close that first loop. Because if you listen to this and don't have any action behind it, then this is not the right platform for you. So I'll see you on the next one. Peace.